Good morning. Welcome to the Kingsport News Hour for the 16th year of Changi, the 7th month and the 11th day now by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Changi Moon, and let's take our usual trip around the kingdom. And right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, we have 61 degrees and clear. 75 for a high today, cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. There can be pounding on roadways. And tonight, low of 59, overcast with a couple of showers. In father's hometown, Cheongju, North Pyongan Province, not Pyongyang Province, by the way. I've seen some Western media make that mistake. It's Pyongan Province, so it's missing a couple of G's, okay, or Y's. Anyway, it's an easy mistake to make it very similar. But anyway, North Pyongan Province, and currently 78, mostly clear. Cloudy and humid, low of 66 tonight. Tomorrow, humid and with clouds followed by brightening sky, a high of 85. At the Cheonryung Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, currently 51 degrees and mostly sunny, a high of 77 today. Sunny and comfortable, it says. Then low of 47 tonight. The nighttime temperature getting into the 40s in Northeast Pennsylvania. But what about Texas? At the Liberty Rock RV Park in Campground in Limestone County, Texas, currently 71 and clear, high of 89 today. Tonight, clear and low of 69. Well, okay, going to stay below 90. That's fine. And then at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, 80 degrees and mostly clear right now. Clear to partly cloudy tonight, humid at low of 70. Tomorrow, turning cloudy, remaining very warm, very humid. A thunderstorm in spots in the afternoon. And they're going to have a high of 90 degrees tomorrow. And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, currently raining, and heavy rain and a thunderstorm for at least 60 minutes. All right. And currently temperature is 89 with a real feel of 94. Shower in spots this evening, otherwise partly cloudy and very humid. Tomorrow turning cloudy and hot, an afternoon thunderstorm, and a high of 95. In Ilan on Taiwan in the Republic of China, currently 87 degrees and cloudy. Tonight getting down to 78 in the evening, shower in places, otherwise partly cloudy. Tomorrow hot with times of sun and clouds, a couple of afternoon thunderstorms, and a high of 94. All right, so the heat lingers in several places. Okay, let's go to Father's Word here in the Cheonseongyong. Let's see here, we're in the book on earthly life in the spirit world. Earthly life in the spirit world, and we're in chapter 1, section 4. And the section 4 is subtitled The Preciousness of Life in the Physical Body. And I'm in section 4.6, which is subtitled Life on Earth is Very Important. So when you go to the spirit world, you will have to, what do they call it? All of a sudden, these words, they're in my mind until they're time to say them, and then they disappear. Supervised probation, I guess. Yeah, supervised probation, I think is the word here. You will have to live with 보호관 생활을 해야 합니다. 보호관. I think you have to be supervised, supervised probation. And he says you'll have to wait for thousands of years. Question. So this is a genuine question, right? Someone can answer it for me in my email or something. Father says you have to wait for thousands of years. And other places he says you'll have to, people go to hell for thousands of years and da-da-da-da-da. He also says, okay, that the spirit world transcends time and space. So, so isn't that a contradiction? You know? And the Bible says, what is a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. So I understand the point he's trying to make. Okay. But it's going to be a long time. And yet spirit world transcends time. Okay, this is a genuine question. Help me out here. Help me out, guys. Help me understand this. Okay. Then he says, your standard, the standards of blessed families are all different. And you got, not all blessed families are the same, basically what he's saying. Okay. Okay. You got to have blessed families, and then you have blessed families, and then you have blessed families. We have all sorts of blessed families. Okay. So where you go will be commensurate to your status, your level, and you will remain there for a long time. Okay, here we go again, a long time. And then your ancestors and your children, your sons and daughters, will say, why? Why couldn't you do better? What's this? And they will accuse you. And you must stay there for a long time that is appropriate. That is appropriate for a long time. That is appropriate. It is not very easy. So you must do this. You must do this on the earth. And he doesn't really say what on the earth, but I guess in context of the entire speech is clear. So anyway, we know what you must fulfill your portion of responsibility on the earth is what he's trying to say here. You must do everything that Father says to do. Bam. So, all right. So we're all in trouble. Yeah, we're all in trouble. Yes. Yes. So basically, I think he's saying, well, don't expect any favors when you get there. Yeah. Especially as Jesus, I believe it was said, I think it was Jesus, not Paul, to whom much is given, much will be required. I think that was Jesus, yeah. To whom much has been given, much will be required. Well, we've been given a lot, right? Because we've been given the holy blessing, even though we do not qualify. And so much is required of us. And so I think, yeah, we will be, as Father says, we will be going to the place that is appropriate for our level, and we'll be staying there for a long time, even though spirit world transcends time. Okay. All right. Anyway, we'll find out when we get there. I think that's the bottom line. We'll find out when we get there. I don't mean to be flippant, but it is a serious question on my part. So if you can help me out, I appreciate it. All right. So speaking of levels and going to places where they are where it's appropriate, I have an update on the Hak Ja Han situation. So some of you may have heard that she put out a statement in the last few days, basically during the weekend, saying that she hasn't done anything wrong. Okay, so but also someone leaked a video. I think it was a video and not a voice recording. I think it was a video. That was not an official video, and it's a video of her speaking to a group of journalists, they say. And I think it's pretty clear that if you listen to the content, it's clear that she's speaking to some of the sort of the editorial staff of the Segedable. And she's saying things there that, and this has been leaked and it's been put on YouTube. And a group of about 3 people who are critical of the church have given kind of a reaction video. They've made a reaction video, and of course they're making fun of some of the things that she's saying because, well, from the perspective of, well, from our perspective as well, but particularly from a secular perspective, some of the things she's saying are pretty outlandish, and the type of things that someone would say only if they really are, what shall I say, suffering from extreme narcissism, or anyway, suffering from some kind of a extreme mental disorder. For example, she says that, I was born in 1943, or no, she doesn't say I was born in 1943. She says the what you call it, the only begotten daughter was born in 1943, and World War II ended in 1945. And so by implication, sort of creating a cause and effect relationship there. So, or because the World War II ended in 1945, only 2 years after the only begotten daughter was born. So, and the reason that 16 countries came to help Korea in the Korean War was because of the only begotten daughter. So you can see how, even from our perspective, even from the perspective of Father's teachings, these are absolute, well, they're just, babbles of a completely ignorant person. But also from a secular perspective, you can see how someone would just sort of hear this and just start laughing, right? And that's what they do. That's what they do. They're just laughing at her while they play this video. And this has gotten, well, this is anyway making the rounds on the Korean. It's a Korean video, so it's making rounds, I guess, among Korean speakers. Meanwhile, the News Today and there's a disagreement among the media on this, but one media outlet, MBC, which is one of the major television stations, and although it's very leftist, it's well respected among Korean television viewers, is reporting that the special counsel has decided to, or has subpoenaed Hak Ja-han to appear at their offices on 8th of September, next Monday. Now, they do, as reporting this, they confirm, they say that it's not been confirmed, but they say that, and they use an interesting verb. They don't say it's confirmed. They don't say it's been reported. They don't say we've learned this. They say that it has been grasped that, or another way to translate would be it has been figured out that. So they're not sort of kind of using a weak verb there. And they say they also got a comment from Hak Ja-han's people who said, no, that's not true. We have not received a subpoena. We're still talking to the special counsel, trying to work something out on how this is going to be done. So I don't know. Now YTN, which is kind of the wire service, I guess you could say, wire service of South Korea, which is also leftist, is saying that the special counsel will soon subpoena Hak Ja-han as early as next week. So they're being more conservative. So we'll have to wait and see. But isn't it interesting that the 8th next week is the 13th anniversary of True Father's Seonghwa? Will she use that as an excuse not to attend? And I do expect her to resist the subpoena. And the normal way in which powerful people in Korea resist subpoenas is that when it's about time for them to appear, they will check themselves into a hospital. And they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sick. I cannot be interrogated now. So they will, they will feign illness in order to sort of delay the inevitable. I've seen this happen so many times, like the head of a table or something like that. And then sometimes when they finally cannot resist it anymore, they will show up in a wheelchair. And she may do that too. She may do that. She may show up in a wheelchair. And then would show up in a wheelchair with a blanket over themselves, and dressed very warmly, like they're just on death's doorstep or something like that, in order to try and gain some kind of sympathy with the public. She may try something like that. Although, she's she has such a high opinion of herself that I don't know if she would really allow herself to be portrayed that way in a sickly fashion. All right. Now, many people don't even know that she's basically blind. Even though every time she goes on stage, she has to have someone beside her to sort of hold her. They hold one of her arms and they guide her to the podium. And then when she's finished, they guide her off. But they make it appear as though somehow, this person is attending her, but basically she's blind. When was it? I guess 2019, right? 2019. So wow, it's already been 6 years. Yeah, it's been 6 years. April of 2019, when she responded to a subpoena from the Sanctuary Church in that situation where Family Federation was suing us to try and prevent us from using the Tongilo symbol, right? Even that she resisted. She resisted and gave all sorts of excuses. And finally, the court had to really sort of the judge finally had to put her foot down. Or was it? We had a number of judges during that time. I can't remember if it was a man or a woman at that particular time. But anyway, put their foot down and forced her to respond to our subpoena. But even then, as she was walking down the hall, she had this person, sort of hanging on to her and holding her up, with one arm. And even one of our lawyers didn't realize that this was being done because she's essentially blind. I mean, not completely blind, but she's essentially blind. So I'm sure they will use that as an excuse, and they will try to say, well, we'll put her in the hospital, and then you can come interrogate her in the hospital. Why don't we do it that way? Something like that. And she may be successful, because she is a grandmother in her 80s. She's sick. She is, in fact, not well. So they may actually succeed in somehow creating a situation that is more to her liking. Right? As I've said before, if she actually goes to the special counsel's office, then she'll have to go through what they euphemistically call the photo line, but it's basically a perp walk. In other words, it's a person, especially in this case, because she's being subpoenaed not as a material witness, but the subpoena defines her as a suspect. And so they've decided that the special counsel has decided that she's guilty and that they're just trying to gather the evidence to prove it to a court. So when she goes, if she goes to the special counsel's office, like the special counsel is probably demanding right now, she'll have to go through what they call the photo line. And then, as I've said, she'll have a reporter on each side of her with a tape recorder, basically, or actually a cell phone, actually, or some sort of recording device from each side, and peppering her with questions. What do you have to say for yourself? Did you actually do this? Did you actually do that? And so-and-so says this, what's your reaction to this, and that kind of stuff. And she'll have to do that for about, I don't know, 30 feet or so, 30, 40 feet, which is, uh, uh, most people now just go there, just keep walking, right? But once in a while, if someone actually has something to say, then they'll stop and they will make a statement. And she may do that. She may actually do that. I think she's actually convinced that all she has to do is present herself, and everyone will bow down to her, and she may actually want to give a message to the Korean public. She may actually do that. I'm sure her lawyers will advise against it, I'm sure. I don't know. Anyway, I laugh, but it is a heartbreaking situation. That she has put herself in this situation, right? And she has done this because she has betrayed father, and she has done this because she rejected the advice of her loving sons, the sons who really loved her. From from September through February of of from September 2012 to February 2013, Hyung Jin Lim was pleading with her again and again and again, not to do this, not to betray father. He was on his knees, and he was on his knees in front of her, and taking her by the hand and in tears, begging her not to betray father, because he said, if you betray father, then you're going down the path of destruction. And that's where she is, although she still doesn't seem to realize that. And because she's a suspect, there is the possibility that she will be incarcerated. There is a possibility, although as I've said, I'm skeptical that will happen. And I've asked my wife, and she's also skeptical that they will actually do that, given the fact that she is a woman in her 80s, a grandmother in her 80s, given the fact that she is not well. But we'll have to see. Perhaps President Trump's statement during the meeting with President Lee Jae-myung a week ago, wasn't it? A week ago yesterday in Washington, sort of accusing, but then pulling back from the accusation that that South Korea was persecuting Christians or persecuting churches. Perhaps that statement by President Trump will save her from having to go to jail. I don't know, but I'm sure it will not save her from being interrogated. And they may interrogate her in the hospital or some place like that. They're not going to go into the palace, but they may interrogate her in the hospital so as to kind of create the conditions that they can show the Americans, show the Trump administration that they're, bending over backwards as much as possible to investigate these are criminal allegations, and the allegations are criminal. Already, of course, Yoon is still in jail. Yoon Yong-ho is still in jail. He's probably known by an American name that I'm not aware of. Some of you know who I'm talking about. As far as I know, Mrs. McDevitt is not in jail, although she has been subpoenaed twice and interrogated twice, that the media has reported on. But someone who has been, you know what? The Family Federation now has sued their, I guess she's former now, their former finance chief, for embezzling, and the current exchange rate would be about $1.4 million. In the past, it would have been $2 million. So 1.4 or $2 million, something like that. So they're going to try to say that these items that were purchased and then handed to an intermediary to be passed on to the former First Lady were purchased without authorization. Apparently, this now is going to be part of their defense, that Hak Ja Han had nothing to do with it. So, I don't know. It looks like, to the observer, it looks like they're just going to be throwing anybody under the bus in order to save Hak Ja Han. That's what it looks like. So now the former finance department chief is being sued for this money that we're embezzling $1.4 million. So, yeah, I don't know. But these people have stated, and I've heard them say this, not these specific people, but people in similar positions, saying that, hey, if Hak Ja Han goes to jail, if Hak Ja Han goes to hell, I'm going to go to hell with her. I've heard them say that in the past. Not these specific people who are involved in this, but that seems to be exactly what is happening right now. Right? And she probably still thinks that, hey, I'm the only begotten daughter, and people just have to hear me speak, and they will bow down and worship me, and all this is going to get cleared up. So we'll see what she does. All right. I spent too much time on that already. All right. Meanwhile, speaking of the devil, Xi Jinping. Okay. Xi Jinping. Let's cover this story because Xi Jinping just had his Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) meeting, and Newsweek is reporting that he has unveiled his vision for a new global order. I was watching a video today that I actually watched some time back, and it's a video of an interview. Who was that interviewer? I've seen him before, and I can't remember what his name is. But anyway, you can look it up. It's a World Bank director. And if you do a search on YouTube for those keywords, I'm sure you'll find it. Who served he was in Beijing for a while as the World Bank director, and he's talking about how the communists in China and the people who are working in connection with communists, and he's talking about the Chinese people, mainland Chinese people in general. They're saying that they have no moral compass, and he's saying that the Cultural Revolution, which was from the 60s to up until 1976, when Mao Zedong died, the Cultural Revolution destroyed China's traditional moral sort of standard, which was Confucianism, Buddhism, and all these religions. And in the Cultural Revolution, they had a new religion, which was Mao Zedong and the Little Red Book. And if you don't know what the Little Red Book is, if you're too young to know what that is, then please look it up. Anyway, Mao Zedong's was a book about that size, filled with the sayings of Mao Zedong. And he says that after Mao's death, then they switched from the Little Red Book to, okay, now get rich. And they say that they use any means at all in order to do that. And he says they have no compunction for stealing things and for doing all sorts of terrible things, which sounds true, because we know that China is using organ transfer as a method of execution, right? They'll take someone, either an underground Christian or a political dissident or a Falun Gong practitioner, and they will actually execute them by removing their organs in order to sell those organs to someone who either a senior member of the Communist Party who needs an organ transplant, or, and I'm sorry, but I've known blessed central families in Korea who have gone to China and says, "Hey, look, I went to China and I got a new liver." Yeah. And they, when they go, they tell themselves that, this guy probably died in a traffic accident or something like that. But no, most likely this liver was taken from a political dissident or an underground Christian or so. I mean, there are terrible, terrible things happening in China. I mean, in the Uyghurs in the what is it, Northwest China, the Uyghurs in Northwest China. Terrible things happening there, where men are put in these sort of detention centers, and then Han Chinese men go in to the homes of those people who have been taken, of those men, and they have sex with the wives so as to produce people who are at least half Han Chinese. All sorts of terrible, terrible things are going on in China, which I'm sure are going to become public knowledge eventually. During World War II, a lot of people in the United States and in Western Europe did not believe that the Nazis were actually systematically exterminating as many Jews as they could. They didn't believe this. And even in Germany, Germans didn't believe it, even though they saw the smoke coming up from the smokestacks, right? Where the bodies were being burned. And even today, there are people who will deny that these kinds of organ transplants are going on in China, but they are. There's been so much evidence presented that they are. And so if China takes over, and if they become the center of a new world order as Xi Jinping wants, then this will be the sort of the ethical and moral foundation of the world. Get rich by any means and take power by any means, and support the power of the Chinese Communist Party by any means. By any means. Including, look at what happened at Tiananmen Square, June 4th, 1989. In China today, you cannot even say June 4th, 1989. Even to say that date is censored. And a person can get arrested even by saying June 4th, 1989. But what happened then? University students and others had been protesting for democracy for a couple of weeks, and the Chinese leadership, the CCP leadership, decided that they had enough, and so they called out the tanks. They called out armored cars. They called out the military, and they literally mowed down. They literally ran over, killed people by running over them in tanks. And we don't even know how many thousands of people were killed that one night. So that will be the kind of world we will live in if the CCP manages to take over. I saw where the president of, which president was this? One of the people attending the SCO was boasting that Xi Jinping gave him a phone that could not be tapped. I hope this person is watching right now, because I've got news for him. The former president of South Korea, Yoon, and his wife, both had what they thought when they were in office. They had what they thought were phones that could not be tapped. And it was true. They could not be tapped. But they're finding out now that everything they said on those phones was stored on a server. Okay. And the special prosecutor is using those recordings to prove their guilt. So yes, it cannot be tapped, but every conversation is stored on a server. So this president, which one was he? One of them anyway. One of them attending the SCO is boasting now that Xi Jinping has given him a gift of a phone that cannot be tapped. And he may not be the only one. He probably gave one to everybody who attended, right? And so now China is going to be recording every conversation that happens on those phones. And this guy has no idea what he's getting himself into it. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to this. Xi Jinping his vision for a new world order. All right, there's the man himself. Okay, what's he got? Oh, look at it. He's got a Napoleon, but it's opposite. Napoleon had his right hand in the coat, but he's got his left hand in the coat. All right. Doing kind of a reverse Napoleon there. All right. Let me bring this up here, make it larger. Okay. Members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization should cooperate further, yes, cooperate, in economics and security to move away from the Western-led world order, Chinese President Xi Jinping has said. Yes, cooperate. With who? Well, obviously with the Chinese Communist Party. Okay. Xi's address to members of the Eurasian bloc on Monday delivered a statement of intent about the rise of the so-called global South. And that's what we used to call it, the third world, but it's called the global South now. A term, by the way, Father always was talking about North-South in a global terms. And so actually Father is behind this. He started this. We should advocate for equal and orderly multipolarization of the world, he said. Yeah, right. But China is going to be the first among equals. Steve Tung, author of the forthcoming book, China's Global Strategy under Xi Jinping, told Newsweek that Xi's comments showed how he was working to transform the existing international order into a Sino-centric one. Yes. Or more accurately, a CCP-centric one. It means the same thing, but let's be clear about this. It's going to be a CCP-centric world order. Why it matters. The SCO is a Eurasian bloc established in 2001, which has expanded to include economic heavyweights like India to become a counterweight to the Western G7 countries. And the G7 are pretty weak now. And the G7, US, it's got Germany, it's got France, and Japan, okay. But then it's got, UK and Italy. So it's not nearly as powerful as it used to be. Xi's comments about closer economic and security cooperation among members chime with the vision of his ally, Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has repeatedly called for a pivot away from the US-led global order. Of course, Putin has his own reasons for wanting that. China has been trying to present itself as a peacemaker amid trade tensions with the United States, Russia's war in the Ukraine, and the Israel-Hamas conflict. Right, peacemaker. Okay. And Xi addressed more than 20 world leaders during the SCO summit held in China's northern port city of Tianjin. He said the bloc had set a model for a new type of international relations and should take advantage of a mega-scale market to boost trade and cooperation in energy, science, and artificial intelligence. Okay. All right, so, but meanwhile, let's look at this. Russia dealt massive blow after key Chinese bank halts payments after EU sanctions. So this is exactly what I've been talking about, right? Hit the Chinese with sanctions. China's and I don't know how to pronounce that. It's probably something like Hey Ho or something like that. Rural Commercial Bank has allegedly stopped accepting payments from Russian businesses after sanctions created by the European Union went into effect on Monday, which would be September 1st. A pro-Russian news outlet reported that the small bank was one of the last banks willing to process transactions for Russia's non-sanctioned credit organizations after the larger banks cut off services. Why? Why? Because they're afraid that the United States is going to cut them off from the dollar system. That's why they've cut off services. The Kyiv Independent reported that many of Russia's smaller and medium-sized businesses had shifted to this bank following the earlier restrictions. The EU reportedly sanctioned this bank on July 18th for providing crypto asset services that allegedly helped Russia bypass sanctions. The outlet reported that the measures took effect on August 9th, barring any EU entities from engaging with the bank. Despite this, payments continued to flow into the bank for several weeks until they were blocked. And then Vedomosti, which is what? This is what's Vedomosti? That's the Russian news, pro-Russian news outlet. Okay. Okay. Until Vedomosti cited importers saying the bank attributed the suspension to adjusting infrastructure. While China has repeatedly claimed neutrality in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, it has repeatedly supplied Russia with dual-use technology and continues to purchase Russian oil, indirectly bolstering Russia's war effort. Despite President Trump's threat to levy a secondary tariff on them, Beijing has vowed to continue purchasing Russian oil, citing national interests. And this is where I want President Trump to, wake up and smell the coffee. All right. Threat to levy is not enough. You've got to actually levy. Act on the threat, please. Act on the threat. Act on the threat now to levy sanctions against these Beijing banks. Okay, because still the dollar is their lifeline. And they can say, oh, BRICS this and SCO that, but still, dollar is their lifeline. And by the way, gold today hit an all-time high. What is it, 3,000? Anyway, you can look it up, but it hit an all-time intraday high today. And more countries are increasing their sort of the ratio of gold in their foreign reserves. And I guess trying to move away from dollars as much as they can. But still, they're trying, but still, China and most other countries live or die by the dollar. So all President Trump has to do is to actually lay down the line and say, okay, right, you want to talk tough at the SCO conference? All right, let's see what you're going to do without the dollar. That's all he has to do. And China will come begging to be let back into the dollar system. And in order to do that, then they will have to put pressure on Russia and tell Russia, hey, no, we're not going to buy your oil anymore. We're not going to give you the dual-use technology anymore because we need America more than we need you. That's what President Trump has to do right now in order to stop this war in Ukraine. And in the process, by the way, if he's lucky, he'll also bring down the CCP. If he's lucky. Anyway, so President Trump really needs to show who's boss. The reports that China continues to block Moscow's interests come as Vladimir Putin is set to travel to China this weekend. And I think this paragraph must have been written before Putin got there. And let's see here. According to analysts, during the visit, Putin and Xi will coordinate their stances on the Ukraine conflict as Washington pushes to halt the hostilities. Right, so coordinating their stances on the conflict, right. So will Xi tell Putin that he needs to wind this thing down? it's an important time for them to talk about where the war is headed and how likely it is to be stopped in the near future. Alexander Gabuev, the director of the Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center, told The Guardian, or of course anything with Carnegie in the name is going to be a globalist organization. The two leaders need to compare notes and ensure they are on the same page. This is important because the war has become one of the main pillars of their relationship. Yes. So is Xi Jinping actually going to follow through on what he says and actually stand up to President Trump? Well, he needs to be tested. President Trump needs to test him. Let's see how well you do without the dollars. You want the BRICS currency? Okay, fine. Knock yourself out. We're not going to let you use the dollar anymore. Let's see how far that gets him. China has become a crucial economic partner for Russia since it invaded Ukraine. We know about that. And Beijing is now the primary purchaser of Russian oil and coal and will soon overtake Europe as Moscow's dominant natural gas customer. Okay. And yesterday we saw that China was purchasing 38% of Russian oil, right? But we also saw that most of the remainder is being purchased by India yesterday. Primary purchaser, but this article seems to disagree. They seem to think that China is the primary purchaser. Okay. All right. So anyway, yeah, same thing with India. You know, already President Trump is coming down pretty hard on India. I think what is it now? I think they're up to 50%, right? 50% tariffs. And I don't know if that applies to their call centers. But anyway, yes, they're suffering. Okay. And Modi is Prime Minister Modi is mad about that, and so now he's attending the SCO conference and sitting there quietly as Xi Jinping across the table says, "Oh, we must support democracy around the world." I mean, Xi Jinping actually said that. I saw it on YouTube. Xi Jinping actually said that to Modi. We must support democracy around the world. And Modi sat there with a straight face. Oh my goodness. Incredible. Well, who was it that says politics makes strange bedfellows? And I think China and India is probably among the strangest. Anyway, so Xi Jinping has unveiled his vision for a world order. Yes. Okay. Well, good luck with that. Okay. All right. Let's see what is going on. Let's go to Newsmax, and Newsmax is leading with domestic news or relative domestic news. I guess I'm afraid people in America don't really understand the significance of what's going on in China right now, and that concerns me because then President Trump is less free to act against China. People don't realize. Here they're leading with the fact that 14,000 U.S.-bound migrants have returned south since Trump border changes, according to the UN. So in other words, 14,000 people who had been traveling north have turned around before they got to the border, before they got to the U.S. border, according to the United Nations. And so, but I mean, this is okay. This is not as important, I'm afraid, as what's going on in China. But this is what Newsmax leads with. And U.S. has halted Palestinian visas processing, so people traveling with Palestinian passports cannot get visas anymore. All right, and here, and Giuliani now is going to get the Medal of Freedom. All right. And Scott Bessent has said that Trump may declare a housing emergency, a national emergency on housing. I'm always skeptical of the president, whether it's Trump or whoever, declaring national emergencies, because what does that do? That gives the president more power, centralizing power. And President Trump has shown that he's not averse to centralizing power in himself. And You can say that, well, yeah, he's using the tools that are given to him, I suppose, but uh, no, we didn't like it when Biden was doing it, and if, just centralizing power in itself makes me uncomfortable. But anyway, so what is he going to do with that centralized power? Well, Bessent isn't saying too much, but I guess what they're going to do is allow for housing developments on federal land. Well, why not sell the federal land, right? The federal government owns way, way, way too much land in America, especially in California. When California talks about seceding from the union, you got to laugh because I think at least half of their land is owned by the federal government. So if they're going to secede from the union, they're going to have to buy that land. But especially out west, land that the federal government got from the Louisiana Purchase and also from the Mexican-American War was sort of claimed by the federal government. So especially in the West, because of those historical reasons, the federal government owns a whole lot of land. Interestingly, not so much in Texas. Only about 2% of the land is owned by the federal government in Texas. And that's because Texas became a republic before it became a state in the United States. And so I think that probably has something to do with the fact that the federal government owns so little land in Texas. So anyway, so the instead of selling the land, President Trump may open the federally owned land to housing developments. So basically, that means that you cannot buy the land, but you can lease the land and build on it. Well, wait a second. Where does that happen? Oh, I know. That happens in China. That's how China does it. Okay. China owns, of course, they own 100% of the land. They own 100%, and people cannot buy the land. No one can buy land in China. You can only lease the land for 50 years, 75 years, sometimes, or 100 years, I think, if you're really lucky, if you pay a high bribe. But that's how they do it in China. So come on, Trump. I still love you, but come on, sell the land. uh, uh, okay, here we go. Okay, so and also he said Bessent suggested the White House is exploring options such as standardizing zoning codes. Wait a second. Who else was planning for that? Biden, the Democrats. They were going to have the federal government take over zoning laws. What's going on here? Boy. Boy. No, wait. I don't know. But I still love him. But he's obviously not perfect. Okay, there's not perfect. But he's becoming less and less perfect, I think. Okay. But all will be forgiven. All will be forgiven if he only just brings down the CCP. All will be forgiven. Yeah. All right. And of course, he's ended the Secret Service protection on Kamala Harris and Secret Service agents say that he was right to do that. Okay, anyway. Let's see here. Modi presence at China summit troubling. Well, but also Modi right now is pretty angry at the United States, so it's it's not surprising. But I think though that in his heart, Modi is not going to become pro-China. Yeah. Okay, and then arms sales sending strong message to Russia. Okay, letter of support for Chagos. real sport for Chicago police. All right, here. And Giuliani released from hospital after a New Hampshire car crash. Really fortunate. I thought when I heard Trump was going to award him the medal, I thought that meant he was about to die, but apparently that's not the case. And apparently he was helping a woman in a domestic violence situation, and then the car that crashed into them, we're told, has nothing to do with that situation. So anyway, I'm happy to report that he got out of the hospital today. He's walking, thank God. Giuliani's son, Andrew Giuliani, told WABC AM in New York, the Hill reported. Andrew Giuliani said that his father, 81, suffered fractured vertebrae and he's in a lot of pain. But as you know, there are a few tougher than Rudy Giuliani. So obviously, you hear this news here just about a half hour ago that President Trump is going to nominate him to become Medal of Freedom recipient. It's kind of overwhelming considering that, just 2 days ago, we're concerned about whether or not he would still have him with us or not. Okay, good. Glad to hear that. Yeah, Giuliani's done a lot of good work, and he deserves our prayers and our support. And prayers do work, by the way, despite what the Jen Psaki and other leftists are saying. All right, and then Russia strives for strong ties with China and Mongolia, and President Trump needs to find a way to drive a wedge between Russia and China, and again, I think sanctioning Chinese banks would be a good way to do that. I think China will cut its ties with Russia pretty quickly if it means that it has to give up dollars. Powerball jackpot, 1.3 billion after no winner. Okay, well, okay, you can do what you want with that. Okay. All right, let's see here. Right, given the tariffs ban, okay, we'll know about that. And that's going to probably go on until October when the Supreme Court comes back, I suspect. And okay, I think that's about it. Okay, all right. So let's look at Breitbart. Let's look at Breitbart. Okay, here. Treasury Secretary Bessent to Labor Day, no tax and tips. Okay, time for parallel prosperity, where Main Street and working Americans do great. What's on the side here? Predicts Fed cuts in September. Supreme Court will validate tariffs. Okay. And Jerry Nadler to retire. Well, he's done enough damage, I guess. He's a New York congressman. Yeah. He tried to get President Trump impeached, to destroy President Trump, but he failed. So now he's fading into the woodwork. Good for him. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And here, Trump open to bringing back insane asylums. Can have these people walking around. And let's see here. Self-deportees walk past skulls of dead migrants in Central American jungles. Yeah. And Texas mom, come on, this is terrible. Intentionally leaving 15-month-old baby to die in hot car. Yeah. But this, I think, is again, highlights the importance of family. You got to think, how desperate must this mother have been? And what's her situation? Let's take a look at this situation, maybe. The child's mother, 27-year-old mother, allegedly intentionally left her toddler in a vehicle for 2 hours, which she knew did not have working air conditioning when an outside temperature of at least 95 degrees. Okay, what's her situation then? Okay. All right. And unfortunately, the child did die. So she may be charged with murder. All right. But they don't tell us about the mother's situation. What drove her to this? First-degree felony. So what is this? Statutory requirements of murder. Okay, well, what kind of murder? There are all kinds of murder. Yeah. I'm curious to know what drove her to this, and I suspect that it could be that as a single mother she just couldn't handle it anymore. That's possible. Maybe she already has other kids. That's possible. Uh, and but she did it intentionally. So if it were drugs, it would be kind of an accident where she was sort of drugged out. But I'm disappointed that the article does not tell us of her situation. There must be something. Must be something to that story. Maybe I could. Will you give me a couple minutes? Maybe I can quickly Google her name. I don't want to hold on a second. Let's find out what's going on with this woman. I have a feeling that it really highlights the importance of family, a strong family. Let's put her name into Google News and see what we come up with. Let's do this together. Okay. Let's try to find a local thing here. Okay. Dallas, Fort Worth. All right. North Texas mom. Okay, let's try the Dallas Fort Worth station. Okay, that may be her local thing. Okay. All right. Oh no, it's the same story. They're not telling us. Okay. Well, let's just try with just one more. No, it's the same story. Yeah. They're not telling us what drove her to this. Okay, well, that's too bad. I'm disappointed. All right, gotta go. All right. So I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so we'll have something. I don't know yet what it will be, but we'll have something tomorrow where I'll go through the Father's teachings. And so in the meantime, God bless, Godspeed, may His kingdom come.